Well, thank you so much for having me. One of the things, losing access to Planned Parenthood is going to greatly have consequences, significant consequences for our underserved patient populations.
Mm,
Planned Parenthood currently provides a wide range of essential health services. And what do we mean by essential health services? Those things that include cancer screenings, being able to provide contraceptive care. They serve as the primary care physicians for several members of the underserved population, as well as being able to provide treatment and screening for sexually transmitted infections. So many patients who use these services are low income, uninsured, underinsured, and now will have very limited health alternatives.
mm. Now, I'm old enough to remember because I used to use Parenthood
Me
back when
too,
I was a
me
kid.
too,
Listen,
me
let's keep it
too.
100. Like, everybody ain't always
Yes,
have insurance, okay?
absolutely. You that college student? Absolutely.
That's
I
it.
definitely used Planned Parenthood as my primary care provider when I was in college. Because when we were, growing up, we didn't have the Affordable Care Act where you could stay on your parents' insurance till you were 26.
That's right. But I remember learning recently that Planned Parenthood does, like most of the work that they do, like the vast majority, I'm talking over 90% of what they do has nothing to do with abortion services. And so
Correct.
if that's the case, everything you just outlined, those sounds like they sound like very important services that people who don't have other healthcare options are actually going to need. Cutting all of that just so you can get at the 3% of services that involve abortion, that feels like not only a hammer going after a nail. Not, no, that's the wrong analogy. It feels like doing way too much to handle way too little. Am I missing something here?
No, you are not missing a thing. Once again, Planned Parenthood centers clearly serve as a vital safety net healthcare provider. Once
Hmm.
again, particularly in our rural and medically underserved communities. We are seeing examples of sort of what I want to say, maybe a little bit of in should I say this, in those regions, like I said, in rural and medically underserved populations, I apologize, alternative to providers are scarce. And so once again, you're kind of biting off your nose to spite your face, because just you said it so well that you're going to block this because of the 3% of services that they provide, for abortion, but we're not looking at the other 97% of healthcare services they provide for these communities in need.
Wow. This is it's tragic because when I was going to Planned Parenthood, it was a whole lot of non-black women in those spaces that did not so this isn't even a
Absolutely.
black situation. This is a healthcare
Absolutely.
situation. And considering how many people rely on these services, one of the other things that we have to be concerned about is that not only is this going to cut off all those services for people who don't have other options, but we're also seeing how some of the repercussions of ending access to this care is playing out in states like Texas, where they were the first to really begin shuttering these Planned Parenthood clinics. The influence of those bans ends up being it has the capacity to impact far more people than just the people who we tend to think about as going to a Planned Parenthood sort of space. Like last week, we just had Representative Pearson on from Tennessee. And last week, we learned about a woman in Tennessee who was denied prenatal care because she was not married. That to me is mind boggling.
Yes,
And it
I saw
feels
that.
like
I saw that.
yeah, isn't this just another effort to further disenfranchise maternal health patients and others who don't show up in the sort of social status that the medical provider agrees with? That feels very dangerous to me.
It is very dangerous. And so when we look at that, just like you said, people being denied services. So the consequences of that is that, especially for those that are in rural communities and have limited access to healthcare already. So now we're going to add on to that, where you will have longer travel distances to where you're going to need to be able to get your health care. There are going to be longer wait times because if everybody in place A now has to go to place D, and then so places A, B, and C are now all in one place in place D, then we're going to have longer wait times. You may
Right.
have delays in people receiving care just because they don't have the transportation to get to where they need to be. And you're going to have higher out of pocket costs because if Medicaid is no longer going to cover this, how am I going to pay for those services?
Mm. And that includes everybody, right? And now that we
That
no longer have,
includes everybody.
so we,
Everybody.
Lord, doc, oh my goodness, we they just
That
passed this
that
bill.
that includes everybody.
My
So I
God.
mean, just if we look at these things in this legislation, to and what I see the consequences of this is the endangerment of the health and safety of people. So we're
Right.
going to have delayed or denied care, reduced access to care. You are going to have worsened health outcomes. So if a physician is allowed to deny you services because you're unmarried. So then where am I going to get my health care from? And I'm a pregnant person. So that's going to delay me getting seen for prenatal care. The delay in prenatal care can affect my outcome. So because I have a delay in prenatal care, then that increases my risk of having a preterm baby.
And if you're
Babies
a black
that are
woman,
babies are born too early. They're going to need intensified medical care as a result of being born too early.
and
Um,
let's carry this on down its natural path, right? Because a lot of people like to act as though those consequences and those harms are something only the family is going to bear. When that child,
oh,
which has the increased medical needs, goes to school, that means your schools, your local schools, are going to have to reallocate resources to be able to sustain, because every child has a right to get educated. Well, I
oh,
mean, so
absolutely
far.
they do.
so
Absolutely
so
they
far, you see how
I'm
things are
gonna,
going.
absolutely they do. So the long-term consequences, or should I say, like the trickle effect of those, may not be seen for years. And so, like
Right,
you said, school systems will now have to carry that burden because you're going to have to have resources allocated to educate that child. And so those resources may look like, when children have individualized education plans, there's
right,
a resource teacher that you're pulling them out to be able to design that. You have case conferences that we have to be able to do and have to have special accommodations for those children. And I'm not saying that we should not be doing those things, but that is going to be the ripple effect
right.
of that. And not only that, for these children that will have these special needs, then that also determines the productivity of them as an adult.
That's right. That's right. So just as though, and y'all, this is why long-term thinking really matters. We don't have the luxury of being short-term thinkers, and frankly, I don't even know if that's a luxury. It's just one of those ignorance is bliss sort of things. We don't have the capacity to build a healthy society and think in terms of short-term gain, even though it's going to cost us longer in the long run. Because if I were, say, hearing about this, Dr. Stubbs, and I'm living in a state like, I don't know, Alabama. We had a caller from Alabama recently, and and I'm already thinking about the fact that in Alabama we already are ranking last, among the last in education, among the last in job opportunities, among the last in terms of housing opportunities, and we're among the last in healthcare, and about to lose a lot of healthcare. There's going to be a lot of people suffering, and this additional loss of medical services, that is going to negatively impact, frankly, a lot of people in the states that voted for this bill more in some ways. Like, I'm in New York. Like, even if I'm in the Northeast, we gonna have budget gaps. Yes, it's gonna be difficult. Yes, but I'm in a Democratic-led state where we believe in science usually. And if you live in a state where your health care is reduced to how much can you pray about it, and then you're losing access to Planned Parenthood. Question for you, Dr. Stubbs: is it only women identified people who get health care at Planned Parenthood?
No, like I said, Planned Parenthood provides services for sexually transmitted infections. So there are, once again, young men that can go in and be
Mm,
able to receive that service as well.
mm, mm,
And
mm.
so if like this, so once again, if everybody doesn't have that access and I'm not going to get treated for those infections, then that decreases my health. Because now I haven't been able to go get screened. I'm spreading, quote unquote, my germs, out there because I don't know.
Yep.
When I finally do be able to get treated because you have a delay in care, then my outcome is worse. It's going to cost more to be able to treat that infection that I could have gotten, a simple prescription for it be done within 7 days, as opposed to as a woman comes in, I'm just giving an infection when you have an advanced, say, chlamydia infection is called pelvic inflammatory disease.
Right.
So what that causes is now I need to be hospitalized. I need to be able to receive IV antibiotics. That also can affect my ability to be fertile and produce children later. Because one of the consequences is that I can now become sterile. So once again, it's all those ripple effects that we don't necessarily see. As you said, if we're just thinking about that short term sort
Right.
of consequences and thinking, we really have to be cognizant of when you throw that pebble in the water, how far are those ripples going to go?
That's right. And it might ripple back into a wave that takes over your own house.
Absolutely.
And that's why empathy matters. And I know empathy is a cuss word to a lot of people. Dr. Stubbs, I saw a book recently written by some Christian folk who said empathy is a sin. I was like, what in the antichrist is happening? Not to bring you into a religious conversation. I'm amazed that people are up is down and down is up, because if I do something because I think it's going to hurt you, but in the long run it's going to hurt me a whole lot more, it would feel like I shouldn't do that thing. I wish more people thought that way. We're seeing a lot of people who didn't think that way now express a lot of buyer's remorse, voters remorse,
Mhm,
if you will, now that these policies
mhm.
are coming out, that those social safety nets being slashed, unfortunately being slashed in a lot of rural and medically underserved communities, many of which, at least when we're talking about rural communities, voted for these policies. And a lot of people now are experiencing voters remorse. How do you see the impacts of all of this on rural communities in particular, especially considering those Medicaid cuts are going to hit those rural communities hard?
Absolutely. In regions where alternative providers are scarce, underserved populations may see an increase in barriers to care. Once again, like I said, traveling long distances, having longer wait times, delays in receiving care. For rural communities where transportation and health infrastructure are often very limited, these barriers could result in unmet health needs and widening of our health disparities.
This is I've never seen such a self-inflicted wound be so unnecessary. I just I mean, I let me I'm going to keep my crackling and cackling to myself cuz I'm trying to keep it focused. We have a guest. We have a guest. Now, Dr. Stubbs, a lot of these people, this all comes down. A lot of people who are even listening right now, willing to take all of this harm to themselves because for them fighting against abortion is the most thing. It's right there after Jesus fed the 5,000. And that has been their main focus. And abortion care, as you and I know, also just so happens to be vital medical care. And the way that
Mhm.
these bans and these laws have been written have essentially given way to these sort of increased instances of maternal mortality, not just for Black women, for people who are pregnant. We saw recently Adriana Smith, as her body, as after she had passed on, her body was forcibly kept alive because of the fetus. Now, we haven't heard a whole lot about the condition of what has happened to that fetus in the hereafter. I do believe there was a birth. I don't even know if I should even call. I don't even know what to call it. Can you talk with us a bit about how this extreme criminalization of providing abortion-related medical services is endangering birthing people everywhere?
What I will say is that the changes in law surrounding abortion have created significant risks and barriers for individuals seeking reproductive care, as
Mm.
well as for providers offering that care. So it goes well beyond just the abortion. It goes once again to the reproductive health care, and that, physicians are confused, somewhat scared, and what services they can offer actually provide and when those services can be provided. For instance, potential legal penalties such as fines, loss of your licensure,
Jeez.
imprisonment, even for providing or even discussing abortion care. Once again, this has led to consequences that endanger the health and safety of pregnant women, of people birthing children. You have delayed or denied care, individuals experiencing pregnancy complications such as miscarriages,
Mm,
Ectopic pregnancies is a word for where the pregnancy is housed outside of the uterus.
mm,
Um, they may face delays in receiving appropriate medical treatment because providers fear legal repercussions for
right.
interventions that could be misstrued as abortion.
Mm,
You have reduced access to care. Threats of criminal charges can deter healthcare providers from providing comprehensive reproductive services. So, leading to closures of clinics, reducing access. Once again, that vital prenatal care that we need to see to prevent early birth and preterm birth. The only way that you can prevent a preterm birth is that you are taking care of the mother during her pregnancy,
mm,
and that you are offering those comprehensive healthcare services. Healthcare providers may practice defensive medicine. Essentially, what that means is I'm a CMA, cover my own. You use the
mhm,
acronym. So,
mhm,
avoiding situations or patients that could put them at legal risk. This could erode trust between patients and providers, and limiting the quality of care that is being offered. Um, we will have disproportionate impact on our vulnerable populations, marginalized groups, including
mm.
people of color, low income individuals, and those in our rural areas are disproportionately affected by reduced access and increased legal risks and exacerbating existing health disparities.
Wow. My concern is about how we prepare, and we only have a moment or two left. But when it comes to preparation, and then I'm thinking about how that big, awful bill also cut off access to medical school funding for so many people who are going to need it. And I was remembering, because back along in ages ago, I thought I was going to be a doctor, Dr. Stubbs. I had to settle for law school. It's what it is. We're over it now. But
Bless your heart, bless your
you
heart,
know,
bless your
we try.
heart.
We try, but
I came to medical school instead of law school. I couldn't do
I knew I
it.
liked you for a reason. I knew it.
Couldn't do it.
But I,
I
I
couldn't do
remember
it.
there was a point where Cuban doctors and in the Cuban medical system, Cuba is what it is, but their medical system, they have been sending they do medicals like how Americans do missionaries. They send doctors to other countries to help out the way Americans send missionaries to do it. Praise the Lord. So I'm concerned about the access to medical care because it feels to me like we are going to have to turn inward in some ways in order to provide for ourselves. We're seeing that there are so many of us living in increasingly vulnerable spaces. What can we do? Should we be sending more of our kids to Cuba to get medical degrees so that they can come back and service us here? Should we be partnering internationally? Should the Congressional Black Caucus be trying to connect these? I'm at a loss because I'm like, other than going to the backwoods to figure out how to be a doula or a midwife, I don't. What should we do?
There are, let me see how I can say this. I think that we cannot stop the fight and that we continue to encourage
Mm,
education. We continue to encourage people that look like us, people that come from these underserved populations and communities. We encourage them to look at healthcare occupations. So,
mm,
whether you're the nurse, whether you're the midwife, whether you're the physician, you're the physical therapist, the occupational therapist, the radiology tech, so that people that are in our underserved populations, when they come in to receive care, they see people that look like them
mm.
and actually have similar experiences,
Yeah.
life experiences with them, because that truly does make a difference in the healthcare that is provided to them.
Yeah.
So that you are seen as a person and not your condition, not your disease, not your race,
Mm,
not your culture.